Hello and welcome. There might be some technical difficulties. I'm going through fixing my setup a little bit. There shouldn't be at all, but if there is, that'll be why. So I apologize ahead of time, but without further ado, we're just going to hop right into it. There was a lot of good games that happened over the Christmas holidays, and a lot of interesting action that basically, for example, like the Jags won. I didn't expect that to happen, honestly. And the Titans, well, I expected the Jags to win, but I didn't expect the Jags to win and the Titans to lose this week. Like, I expected other stuff to happen. I mean, yeah, it's just wild week. Obviously, as you can see, too, I'm recording on a Monday, so this is before the Colts game. I'm assuming Chargers will win. I have basically, no faith in the Colts anymore. So, without further ado, we'll get into it, like I said, with the Jags game, which Trevor Lawrence is starting to become a guy. I mean, he played really, really well in this game. It was super, super rainy conditions, and, I mean, he did what he needed to do to get them the win. He had really good drives down the field. ETN did well on the ground as well. Trevor Lawrence was 20 for 31 for 229. I mean, he had no touchdowns, but it was pouring down rain. That's not the most surprising. ETN finished with 22 carries for 83 yards, and the bigger story is just the Jets. I mean, they had Zach Wilson in for a while. He just ended up not doing much of anything. He got booed almost the whole game, basically. And then they ended up bringing Streveler in late for a package, and they ended up just leaving him in. And the way it looks, honestly, I'm starting to think we maybe saw the last of Zach Wilson in New York, because it's just getting way too loud there. Too much is going on. But yeah, no, I think Zach Wilson's time in New York is probably going to come to an end, just because there just seems like there's way too much going on now, way too much outside noise, and he just does not look like he just is going to end up doing anything in there. He looks like one of the many stars of New York that it's just the outside got to him. I don't know. I'm not saying that it did exactly, but I mean, it's just, you watch the way he plays, it looks like he plays with almost no confidence at this point. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he hasn't played the best, but it's just the fact that it's just a really hard situation to tell, honestly. But I just don't see how Zach Wilson ends up back in New York, honestly. And the only reason that this game matters so much now is, as you can see, it's a clinched playoff spot. That's why. The Jaguars are in the hunt, obviously, but they're in the division, and they won the division. So now that game's basically going to come down to potentially week 18, and that's going to be a really, really big game for the AFC South, because somebody has to win it, and everyone's been kind of playing really bad. Yeah, speaking of, since I'm thinking about it, so here are the teams that clinched the playoff spot, obviously. So the Ravens and Bengals clinched, Chiefs clinched, and Bills clinched for the AFC, and then in the NFC, the Eagles clinched. I think they can almost clinch the 1 seed if they win I think it's one of their next two. I don't think it's both their next two. I think it's if they win one of their next two and maybe the Cowboys lose. It's something like that, and they can win, clinch the 1 seed. And yeah, the Bengals and Ravens play week 18. So this upcoming week it's Ravens Steelers, and if the Ravens find a way to win, and the Bengals it's all going to come down to the Bengals. The Bengals win out, it's their division. If they lose next week and the Ravens win, it's going to come down to a week 18 matchup, and that should be really, really exciting. But yeah, I'm just gonna. But that's basically, as you can see, that's basically who's clinched so far. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are still left in the hunt, but I think basically a majority of them get done, maybe. Like next week, I think majority clinch next week, and then there's two spots maybe to clinch them week 18. But I could be totally wrong. I'm not 100% sure. We're going into Saturday. Saints Brown, not much to talk about here. I mean, these are two teams that really aren't going much of anywhere. The Saints end up winning. I didn't end up seeing a lot of this game, honestly. I saw the Browns were up, and I figured the Browns should have won that game. Saw it was really cold, but then somehow the Saints ended up winning. I truly can not tell you how, honestly. I'm so surprised Andy Dalton starting to begin with, to be honest. And I mean, this isn't me trying to bash the guy or hate on the guy. It's just I truly am confused why Jameis isn't playing. I mean, I thought he gave them a better chance to win, but now, I mean, I can't say much, obviously, because Andy Dalton won, but yeah, they're basically two teams that aren't going much of anywhere. The Falcons and Ravens. Ravens won 17-9. I mean, there's not, like I said, Ravens won, but there's not too much to talk about in this game. I didn't see a lot of that game either, but just based off, looking at the score, I don't think anything, really major happened in the game. And then, yeah, both the Ravens, and the Ravens have a really big game upcoming this week. I mean, that was more of a get the job done type of game last week, and they did. The Falcons, I mean, Desmond Ridder, looking at the stats alone, Desmond Ridder was 23 for 33 for 218. That's a little bit better. I think that he has potential. Obviously didn't see the game flow, so I can't tell you how it went, but I think I saw the scores here and there. I think it was 14-3 at one point, so it really wasn't like too close, but Desmond Ridder has a chance to do something for the Falcons, but I mean, this year is just probably a wash for them. The way it's looking, it's probably going to come down to the Bucs and Panthers, and the Panthers after Sunday, I mean, excuse me, after Saturday, I mean, sheesh. I might as well just hop into it now. The Panthers and Lions, they played the score's 23-37 Panthers. I mean, Panthers just ran all over the Lions. I mean, I think they had 323 yards on the ground, set a new franchise record for most rushing yards in a game. There's absolutely no stopping this rushing attack from the Panthers that game. And I mean, the Lions, they put up a fight towards the end. I gotta look up what his name is. It begins with a Z. I'm probably gonna butcher how to say it. It's Zylstra. I forget what his first name is, but he caught 3 touchdowns on the day for them. I mean, really good outing by him, but yeah, it was more of an impressive win by the Panthers because the Bucs just hung on and almost lost to the Cardinals. And so now the Panthers have put themselves in a really good spot because the Bucs look awful. I'll get into that game in a minute when I get to that point, but they look awful. I capitalized on it, thankfully, but they look last week, but I mean, or yesterday, I guess, even, but they looked awful. And it makes me wonder how they're going to do in the playoffs. Like, the whole playoff seeding, at the end, I'll go over that. It's going to be really, really interesting what some of these matchups could potentially be. But yeah, moving on. Bengals-Patriots. This game really mattered, like, mainly for the Bengals. They ended up coming out with the win, but that game was way closer than it should have been. It was like, I believe, what is it, 22? Yeah, it was 22-0 at half. And then the story of the last few weeks is you get the halftime lead, you blow the halftime lead. They ended up giving up 18 uncontested points, and it basically came down to a last drive, and then Ramondre Stevenson fumbled. Huge fumble by him. The Bengals ended up getting the ball back, and that's basically was the game. It's just been weird for the Patriots this year. They are just doing a lot of un-Patriots characteristic things, like fumbling the ball, bad plays on special teams, bad plays when you should just go down and not throw the ball to Chandler Jones. That team seems like there's a lot going on. The big question to that team is Mac Jones, too. I mean, I'm assuming he's going to start and everything, but that's another fan base that's basically just turning on the guy. And I'll be honest, I don't know what it is about sports recently, but it just feels like people are way too quick to turn on their people. I mean, just for example, I think it might be delusional of me, and maybe I'm just looking at this wrong, but I didn't give up on the Colts basically until like week, I want to say, it's whenever I guess last week when they lost to the Vikings, I basically didn't give up on them, but you see a lot of fan bases and a lot of teams that are just like, the second their quarterbacks players have like 2 or 3 bad games, like cut him, trade him, get rid of him. And I know it's like how it is nowadays, like everything is like quick. You want to see quick results, but it's just, yeah, I don't get it. But regardless, I mean, that's case in point, Mac Jones. He goes to the Pro Bowl last year, which I still kind of don't know how, but he had a decent year last year. And then this year, it's been like kind of really bad, and everyone on that team wants Bailey Zappi. So I mean, I don't get it personally. Like there's some situations, yes, you can tell right away, but I've even caught myself in a bad habit of this year that teams I thought were dead for a few weeks come back and flip around and vice versa. And I've been trying to do a little bit better about it personally, like not getting caught up in like the week-on-week basis like some people do, but that's just something I wanted to point out. It's very interesting to me, like how quickly people are, like, because basically this whole season has just been Mac Jones looks awful, all this, all that, they should fire him, which there's multiple sides to it too, obviously. Like there's the Matt Patricia side as the OC and all this and all that, and I'm by no means a Patriot supporter, so this is actually awesome to see because I hate the Patriots. I guess I don't hate them, but I very much dislike them, as you can see from the... So I am very happy to see that they're kind of like a dumpster fire, but it just sucks because the Colts are a little bit worse. But yeah, overall, I mean, just like, basically to make a long story short, I just don't get what the Patriots are this year. I mean, they don't look anything like themselves. Everything's just been off. And when it comes to the future, I mean, I don't... Do they go Zappi? Do they go Mac Jones? I don't know. I mean, I think their season's, like, not totally over, but it's reaching that dangerous point because, as you can see, now they're on one of the bubble teams, and Yeah, that's just not an area you want to be at this time of season. Bills, Bears. Bears kept it competitive for a bit. They took a lead going into half. They're up 10-6, but then basically the second half, the Bears just didn't get much of anything going. It was really cold out that game too, so I mean that fact the pass game a little bit. Both of the quarterbacks didn't do much, but Bills ended up winning 35-13. So I mean they just pretty much handled business. The game wasn't close at all in the second half, and yeah, as we can see though, the Bills hold the 1 seed right now over the Chiefs. They're both tied, so that's going to be a interesting race to end the season because, like I said, I'll go over the seeding at the end, but I think potentially, like, you might not want to be the 2 seed this year. Like, you might not want to be the 3 seed. And then especially, like, for example, in the NFC East, you might not want to be the 5 seed because even though they're playing bad, I would not want to play a Bucks team at home. For the Giants, Vikings clinched out another close game. Justin Jefferson passed Randy Moss to set the Vikings' new single-season yards record. I mean, he's insane. He's really good at football, honestly. TJ Hawk went off as well. He had 2 touchdowns. And this game basically was 24-24. Came down to, I think, a 61-yarder from Greg Joseph. He drills it. And the Vikings with, I think, there's a photo that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago about the point differential, and all these teams that are in the top 10 are basically like over 20 or 30 minimum. And then this Vikings at -1, and it's so funny. But I mean, this year they're 11-0 in close games, and usually the ball rolls your way or it doesn't. In years like this, I mean, they're getting every single roll that they could have. So the Vikings have been a lot of bad side of history when it comes to that type of stuff, but this year they've been able to get it done. They've been doing really well, and I mean, it's just impressive. Like, every time you think it's a close game, usually it's like, oh, Vikings usually lose this game. Oh, they usually lose the game. They've been winning, and I mean, it's just something. But coming into the playoffs, I mean, they are. The only thing that has me scared is they're letting teams hang around. Like, for example, Colts are up 33-0. Obviously, they blew it, but they let the Colts get up 33-0 on them. They let the Giants, we know what the Giants are overperforming, but they're, for what they have, I mean, they basically have no receivers at all, and they are way overperforming. Isaiah Hodgins leads them, and I think touchdowns or even, like, it's either touchdowns, like, targets or receptions the last few weeks he's been there. Might be all 3 categories. He's been there 2 weeks, so they're struggling. I mean, they have Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, and that's it, and they kept fighting around with the Vikings when the good teams have been putting them away. I mean, it's nothing against the Giants. The Giants they have a really good coach, so that's how they've been able to stay in all these games. But yeah, just for the most part, I mean, the Vikings are playing a lot of close games, and the more they play with fire, the better chance they have to get got. But, I mean, the good part about them is they prove they can play in these games. They prove they can come back from 33. They prove they can hang around and kick game-winning field goals. I mean, overall, it was a really good win by the Vikings, and yet again, really impressive for Justin Jefferson, who is just becoming. Obviously, I'm not going to say that too soon because he still has a lot of years to go. But I mean, the way he's starting out is he has a chance to get up there with some of the greats. I mean, I'm trying to think in my lifetime. I mean, I probably started paying attention around football when I was like 8 or 9. So I missed just thinking about it, just the way I've seen them, I mean, there's not many receivers, like, off the top of my head that I could say the first 3 years. I remember watching and be like, yeah, that guy's a guy. I mean, he's almost the number 1 receiver in the league, and he's in his, 3rd year. He's just really good at football, and honestly, it's just, like I said, very impressive win by the Vikings, who now are 11-0, set an NFL record for most single-digit wins in a season. I mean, amazing. Going into the Chiefs, Seahawks, it was -10, very, very, very cold. Kadarius Toney came back. He scored a touchdown. Jerick McKinnon scored another touchdown. So the NBA Jam rules are on for him. He scored now 3 games in a row. And Mahomes had a really good, awesome rushing touchdown where he basically dove, had his wrist on the ground, and the way he dove for the pylon and barely nicked it. Looked very athletic, and Chiefs handled business. They clinched their division for, I think, I'm actually not 100% sure if they clinched the playoffs or the division with the win on yesterday. I think it was playoff. I mean, I don't know what it was. They clinched something yesterday, honestly, and I can't remember what it was at this point, but they were able to clinch something, and I mean, it was just a very impressive win. Mahomes had 224 and 2 passing, and then 1 on the ground. I mean, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. They've been playing really impressive ball. They dominated their division now for 7 years, and they're fighting for the 1 seed with the Bills. And the way it's looking, I mean, I need to see their schedule because between them and the Bills, I don't know what's going to come down to. It's Broncos Raiders for the Chiefs. So I mean, they could, depending what they do with the starter, they can go 14-3, with almost no problem. And then for the Bills, I think the Bills have a little bit more of a tougher schedule. They play the Bengals and Patriots, so I mean, definitely I think the Chiefs have the easier of these two schedules. But anything can, those are two division games, so almost anything can happen because division games are usually always tight and close no matter what. But I mean, honestly, after basically, I don't got any much more to say. The Chiefs are really, really good, honestly, and I mean they played a really impressive game against the Seahawks. The Seahawks basically stood no chance. It felt like the Chiefs had total control of the game. And these are all the Saturday games. 49ers Commanders, I'll go over that real quick just because it's on the top of my list. 49ers handle business. This was another one of those games basically. Like, I'm just looking at the score to kind of remind myself. This was another one of those games where it's like, it wasn't really in that much contention. I mean, it was close. It was back and forth for a little bit. Terry McLaurin had an amazing catch. He is a stud wide receiver. I feel bad that he's one of those receivers I feel bad for where he's at because, I mean, he's dealing with, obviously, Heineke's not the best NFL quarterback. He's okay, but he's not the best. And then he's dealing with Carson Wentz as well, who when Carson Wentz is in just doesn't target him for some reason. So, he's a really good receiver stuck in a bad. He kind of reminds me of like the D-Hop, where D-Hop was stuck in Texas with Houston for all those years and basically didn't. I guess he had Deshaun Watson for a bit, but before he had Deshaun Watson, he had like no quarterbacks basically. And it was a really good game for the 49ers. They basically held control of the game. Heineke ended up getting benched at the end because basically in the fourth quarter, there was a chance where it was like going to be a 10-9 point game and they could have kept it maybe at that, but then basically the defense for the 49ers just came to life. They just handled the Commanders, and Heineke had, I think, a fumble, 2 interceptions in the fourth. I mean, he just basically unraveled. The defense got to him, so they benched him for Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz led down a drive, and they ended up losing. They were down 8 at one point, and then they ended up scoring again, and they ended up winning by 17. But as you can see, the big reason that's big for the Commanders is now they are down on the they're down in the 7th now with the Giants. And the fact that the Giants beat them, now they're a game behind the Giants, as you can see on the bubble. The Lions, Packers, and Seahawks are all right there. And two of those teams are really, really hot right now. So it's starting to look really scary for the Commanders. And that was a game they pretty much had to have. But you knew, like, there was a chance that they could get got. And they ended up getting got bad. The Titans-Cowboys. So Texans-Titans, this was just a shocker. Derrick Henry only had 100 on the ground and 1 touchdown. Malik Willis didn't do much of anything in those those gritty, those, put any adjective you want to use for basically like disgusting, those nasty. I mean, they just play dirty, grimy football. The Texans have been hanging around for 2 weeks, and I mean, I said the Titans should beat them, but that's just solely for fact. I thought they would give Derrick Henry the ball almost every other play, but the Texans did a good job of handling him holding him, and forcing them to do more with Malik Willis, and Malik Willis just isn't ready, as you can tell. I mean, the Texans have been hanging tough with a few teams the last few weeks, so you thought there was a chance that they were. I mean, I thought they were going to potentially win a game upcoming here soon. I didn't know if they would for sure, obviously, because they only had the one win, but they played. It basically went in, like, with the timeline, it makes sense now, basically what I'm trying to say, because they went from beating the Cowboys to losing on the final drive. They went from beating the Chiefs to losing in overtime. And now they went from beating the Titans to they actually finished the game out, beat the Titans. And now, because of that win, like I said, the Jags are in the hunt now. And they basically, they're probably going to win the division. It's going to come down to the last game, but the Jaguars are one of the hottest teams in football right now. They're just winning out. They've played really well the last few weeks. And, I mean, yeah, like I said, with the way the Titans have been, I honestly don't see how they win the division. I mean, especially with Tannehill out, and they already have the issues. That team has just been falling apart, basically. The OC has a DUI. Vrabel looks like kind of in a like a fog almost of what's going on. The GM got fired. I mean, that's basically just a dumpster fire of like a situations they're going through. But it's a really, really good win, like I said, for the Texans, because basically the AFC South is continuing to be the poop bowl, and somebody has to win it, and there's a chance that the Jaguars, after all their struggles at the beginning of the season, going from Clown Town last year with Urban Meyer, have a chance to now go in the playoffs for the first time since 2017. Cowboys-Eagles. This game was actually like a really awesome game. It was back and forth the whole time. Eagles were up 10 at one point, and then the Cowboys ended up marching back, and they kicked a field goal to go up 3. Eagles get the ball back, fumble the ball, and then the Cowboys kick another field goal to go up, and then they ended up winning 40-34. Gardner Minshew went 24 for 40 for 355 and 2. Dak Prescott went 27 for 35 for 347 and 3. So, I mean, these quarterbacks played really well. Obviously, the issues was Minshew had 2 interceptions, Dak had the 1, and then the big thing was just the turnovers. The Eagles, I think, had 2 fumbles I know it was 1 for sure for Miles Sanders at the end of the game, but if you take away those 3 turnovers, I mean, the Eagles pretty much played the best game they could. And those 3 turnovers turned into basically 2 field goals that ended up being the game-winning decision. But I thought Gardner Minshew looked pretty well in this game. It sounds like also some news I did mention. I don't know if I mentioned it with the last with the Titans, but I think Derrick Henry's sitting this upcoming week. Oh, okay. I read that completely wrong. So apparently this tweet that I thought it said in 2019 the Titans made Derrick Henry inactive against the Saints with the game having no impact on the standings. So I thought they were saying he was going to be back for this. They were saying this last week, so what I said was completely wrong. I take that back, but yeah, overall, just basically going back to the Cowboys-Eagles. Cowboys were really impressive. They played a really good game again, and they have been playing pretty hot. The way it's looking, they're probably going to match up with the Bucs, because I think they're pretty much locked into the 5 seed unless some magic happens and they end up beating the Eagles. But the way it's looking, I mean, it's probably going to be the Bucs and Eagles, or Bucs and Cowboys coming into Wild Card Weekend. And then the Saturday night game was Steelers, Raiders, immaculate reception for Franco game, and Steelers ended up winning 13-10. They didn't do too hot. I mean, they were okay, but there was a lot of punts, a lot of dirty football. I mean, it was a cold game in Pittsburgh, so it was a really under-type game. But the one thing I will continue to say, and I've been preaching on for a while, the Raiders team, they need to improve, because when they get a lead, they are one of the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, the Raiders had a 7-0 lead, and then it turned into a 10-3 lead, and then they gave up 10 unanswered in the fourth. And I mean, I get the weather and everything, but for some reason, like, this Raiders team will go up, and then they forget how to score points. But if they're down and out and need points, they play like one of the best teams in football. And another thing is they need to get Devontae Adams the ball. I think that's one of the big issues that's leading into it, is they're just not giving Devontae Adams the ball. I mean, Aaron Rodgers would find time to force feed that guy. Like, they could be up 30 and need to run the ball, and he'll throw the ball to Devontae Adams just to get him some looks if he hasn't yet. I mean, they need to do that more. That's been one of the bigger issues this year, is they're just not giving Devontae Adams looks, and I don't know why they're giving him looks. They should be. It makes no sense to me, but Steelers win keeps them alive in the playoffs potentially, depending on what happens with, like, the Dolphins and all that. So, I mean, that's a huge one for them because now there's a chance. Going into Sunday, Broncos, Rams, these guys aren't playing for anything. Baker, 24 for 28, and the Rams just beat the hell out of the Broncos. It was 51-14. Yeah, there's not much to talk about there. I mean, 51-14, that's all you got to say. Russ looked awful that game, basically, and he ended up getting benched towards the end. Packers-Dolphins, this was probably the game of the day. It was really high scoring. It was field goal, touchdown. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown, field goal. And basically, like, it was Dolphins field goal, Packers field goal, Dolphins touchdown, Packers touchdown. Dolphins touchdown, Dolphins field goal, Packers field goal, Packers touchdown. And then Green Bay got 2 field goals in the fourth. That basically were their winners. And Tua had a really good first half and a really bad second half. And he just... I'm not going to, like, iterate. I don't know what it was. I mean, he played really well in the first half, and the second half just didn't do much of anything. Aaron Rodgers continues to keep these Packers alive. They went out. They still have a chance to make the playoffs, and this is a really impressive win. Packers are now 15-0 in December under LaFleur, and yeah, I just mean they overall, because I mean the first half the Dolphins looked like they have the potential to might run away with it. They had their speedsters were getting going. Waddle had a big touchdown. But the Packers answered every punch with the counter punch, and they hung around. Then Aaron Rodgers did what he needed to do, put some drives together to like basically shoot some clock, and then the defense had big plays. DeAndre Campbell had an interception. I don't know if he had the last one, but Campbell had one of the interceptions. I don't think it was the game. Rasul Douglas had the game-winning interception. He was running with Tyreek Hill on a drag and then popped back a few yards. Basically, he was basically I'm no DB expert, obviously, but he was basically covering Tyreek Hill, and then he dropped back and then picked off Tua once he read his eyes and saw that he was going to the tight end, who was in a close spot. And yeah, the Packers just continued to basically stay alive. They did what they needed to do because now, like I said, they're alive. They still get a chance to win. And then going into the Sunday night game, it was Bucks Cardinals. Bucks look terrible. It was 6-6 basically the whole game, and then it turned into 16-6, and then Tom Brady flipped the switch, got to 16-16 to go to overtime, and then in overtime they I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if it was in overtime or not. I'm pretty sure they punted in overtime, but how they got to overtime was it's a 4th and 1. Cardinals get the first, the game's over. They do the fake handoff. He does a pitch, and the pitch between McSorley and the running back just didn't go well. I can't remember. This might have started. This was either when they were down 3 or when they were down 10. But this is what really, I think, gave the Bucks all the hope is they did that pitch on 4th and 1, fumble recovered by the Bucks, and ended up leading them to win. Drake McSorley didn't do bad, but he was by no means any good. I mean, I feel like if there was any, I don't want to say the word capable, but, if there's, because I thought he did all right, but there's any quarterback, I don't want to say Mahomes either, because, obviously these are really good, but even, I would say, the mediocre quarterbacks, maybe a Derek Carr even. If you put anybody in this situation, I feel like they could have won this game because the Bucks were dead on offense, and defense looked like they were kind of giving up, but they just couldn't. They just couldn't get off the field. Basically, the Cardinals couldn't. They couldn't, but they were able to some on defense. But when it came to offense, they just couldn't get enough damage done to get the job done. So, Bucks ended up hanging around the win, and yeah, it was an awesome win by the Bucks because they really needed that to stay alive. And it wasn't really, and the only reason I say it's awesome is because they pulled out a good overtime win in a game that they probably should have lost. Yeah, like I said, so for the playoffs end of the day, the way it's looking, Eagles and Bills would get the byes. In the NFC, we got the Chiefs against the AFC, we got the Chiefs against the Dolphins, Bengals against Chargers, and then we got the Ravens and Jaguars. I honestly think that'd be pretty cool. Assuming that, so the way I see it, so if it's Chiefs, Dolphins, I think that's going to be a really, really close game, but I think the Chiefs are going to edge that out just because they're a little bit more of a complete team. I think the Dolphins, based on what they've shown, I think they're a team for potentially next year. I think this year they showed a little bit of what they can do. I think one more year in the system, I think next year potentially they could be the 12-3 team. I don't know that, obviously, but the Dolphins potentially might not even be in that playoff slot coming this week. So I just would have to think the way the Chiefs have been playing, they win that game. Bengals, Chargers, as much as I would love to go Chargers there, I don't know if I can trust them in a big game as of right now. So I'd probably go Bengals. And then I would think that the Jaguars probably win a game against the Ravens, I want to say. I don't know, but I think that would be a really, really good matchup, especially with how injured the Ravens have been. For the NFC, Eagles would get the bye. It would be Vikings, Commanders. Ooh. That would be very interesting. 49ers, Giants, and then Bucks, Cowboys. When it came to this, I want to say, the fact that I think the Commanders are one of the few teams, though, that probably the Vikings could be safe against. But, there's a chance that they could lose to them. I want to take the 7th seed against the Vikings, almost regardless. But if it's the Commanders, I don't think so. If the Packers somehow getting into that 7th seed and play the Vikings, I would maybe take them, that type of team. But I don't know if I fully trust the Commanders to beat the Vikings just yet. 49ers, I think they would beat the Giants. As much as I do love the Giants, I think the 49ers just have too much talent. They should be almost I don't want to say guarantee, obviously, because nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, but they're as close as you can get almost can guarantee, conference championship. Minimum, they should win this round and go to the divisional. And then for Cowboys, Bucks, I would have to think that the Cowboys win that series. I would think so, but knowing how they can play, that's a game where Dak could play just awful, and somehow Tom Brady ends up winning. But I don't know. Regardless, these should be a lot of fun matchups. that was a really fun week in NFL. I'll go over the games next week at the end. But now, just to get into college real quick, just to like kind of talk about what really happened in college. Not going to say too much. Just going to go over quickly. Eastern Michigan ended up blowing out San Jose 41-27. Yeah, it was just basically, that game wasn't close at all, really at all. Eastern Michigan went up big, and then it basically stayed up big. Liberty Toledo. Toledo ended up pulling out a close one. It ended up coming down to the fourth quarter. It was a 12-8 fourth quarter, and Toledo ended up scoring late to give them the... Oh, no, sorry. Toledo was up, and they let Liberty come back and make it look a little bit closer than it should have been. But it's a very good win by Toledo. Western Kentucky blew out South Alabama 44-23. A really impressive game. Air Force beat Baylor. That was really impressive for Air Force. That was a huge win for them. I think they have 10 wins. They had finished with 10 wins. I think this is their fourth time since 2015. I mean, they've been a really impressive program. Houston beats ULL. And I didn't really see much of that game, honestly, so I couldn't tell you much of what happened. Wake Forest ended up beating Missouri. That one wasn't too much of a shocker. Hartman played all right. He had 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I think he's potentially could be an NFL quarterback, but I think he'd be a very late round draft pick now. I was really high on him last year when they were really, really well, and then this year they had a bit of a dip, and there's a bit going on, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. And then the last game was Middle Tennessee, San Diego State. Middle Tennessee wins 25-23. So going into this upcoming week, there's New Mexico versus Bowling Green on today. We got Southern Georgia versus Buffalo Tuesday, Utah versus Memphis, Coastal Carolina versus East Carolina, Wisconsin, Oklahoma State. Those are all on Tuesday. Wednesday, we have UCF, Duke, Kansas, Arkansas, Oregon, North Carolina, Texas, Ole Miss. Thursday, we have Syracuse, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Florida State, Texas, Washington. So these are all like the bigger teams with the big bowl games. We got all the other ones out of the way, so this week is all of the bigger schools. So all of like the bigger, like the Big Ten, Pac-12s, all that type of schools. Friday, we'll have Notre Dame versus South Carolina, Maryland versus North Carolina, NC State, UCLA versus Pittsburgh, Ohio versus Wyoming. And then we'll end it with Clemson, Tennessee. And then Saturday, we'll have 2 games before the college football semis. We'll have Alabama, Kansas State, and then we'll have Iowa, Kentucky, and that leads into TCU, Michigan, then Ohio State, Georgia. And then on the January 2nd, we'll have LSU, Purdue, Mississippi State, Illinois, Tulane, USC, and then Penn State, Utah to finish out the bowl season. And then past that, we'll go to the college football playoffs. So really, a lot of the bowl action is going to be coming this week. There's going to be a lot of action, a lot of fun games. And this is usually like the best time of year for college football because NFL is usually right towards the end. So usually this week and next week don't matter too much because people are starting to sit. It will a little bit more this year for some seedings, but for most part, I think by these last 2 weeks, NFL won't matter too much. So it's going to be a huge week for college. Because, yeah, like as you can see, there's 3 playoff berths in each league, so there's going to be a lot of games in the NFL that are just for basically for draft seeding and all that. So there's going to be a lot of these college games that are going to be probably popping up, and they're going to be hopefully really good. But yeah, we're going into week 17 for Thursday night. We got the Cowboys versus the Titans on Thursday. I mean, Cowboys should handle business, but especially after the big win against the Eagles. And then going into Sunday, we have Colts, Giants, Rams, Chargers, Saints, Eagles, Bears, Lions, Panthers, Bucks. So far that's the big game. A lot of those other games are just teams that like need to win to basically either keep their playoff seeding or help their draft stock. So one of the big games would be Panthers, Bucks. That potentially, if the Panthers win, they'll be tied with the Bucks for the division. Jaguars, Texans, Chiefs, Broncos, Cardinals, Falcons, Browns, Commanders, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets, Seahawks, 49ers, Raiders. Vikings, Packers is another big game. Bills, Bengals is a really big game. And then Steelers, Ravens is another big game. So I'd say my most important games of the week are Bills, Bengals because of the playoff implications for Bills are fighting for 1 seed, Bengals are fighting for the division. Steelers, Ravens. Ravens are fighting for a playoff spot, and they're also fighting for the division. They need a win to keep up. And the Bengals will be watching that game very closely. Packers, Vikings really matters because the Packers need a win. And if they don't win, then they're basically eliminated from the playoffs. For Vikings, they need a loss potentially puts them at the 3 seed.
because the 49ers play the Raiders and they could potentially like move up a seed, I believe. And then Bucks Panthers, that'll be for the division potentially. The Bucks need to win that game and they need to not let the Panthers hang around. Then past that, yeah, basically all the other games are just for seeding and everything. And that goes over the NFL and college for this week. I'm personally really juiced for the college football playoffs that are coming this week. Very excited to see what happens with that. And I'm really excited for this NFL season. It's been a really long season. Can't believe we're already to week 17 upcoming after this week. And like I said, the Chargers-Colts play tonight. Chargers, I assume, will win that game, even if they don't. I'm assuming they should win that game, if not big, at least close. And then that should, I don't think, affect them too much. I think it potentially they could clinch a playoff spot tonight. I don't think so. I think it just helps them be a little bit safer. But yeah, regardless, it's this has been a really fun season for college and NFL. Starting to wrap up towards the end, and it's hard to believe that playoffs are for NFL. Playoffs are right around the corner, and for this week, I mean, we're already at the college football playoffs.